Hey everybody, my next guest can be found headlining clubs and festivals all over the country. He has appeared on Late Show with David Letterman, Conan, and NBC's Last Comic Standing. His latest comedy special, Fun to Watch, is out now and can be found on YouTube. Here he is, folks, the one and only Sean Donnelly. How's it going, man?
Hello, how are you? Great to be here.
Yes, it's great to have you, man. I've been watching you for a long time, man. You just got the new special that came out, and I was like, man, I got to get Sean on this show. Yeah, because you recorded what Fun to Watch recently.
Yeah, so I recorded just one show in Raleigh, and I called it Fun to Watch because it's kind of deep cut comedian reason why. I think comedians can kind of take shots here and there. I think people people can be a little weird sometimes in the scene. You know how it is. So one day I did a show in Manhattan. It went really well. I was really happy with myself, and I walked out, and you had one of those guys. And we've all been there. We've all said some passive aggressive stuff in our lives, and a guy goes. The guy looks at me. I didn't even know the guy, and he was a comic, and he just goes, That was fun to watch. It was fun to watch." And I was like, "Well, it was funny too, but that I know what you're trying to do here, or whatever it is." So I kind of obsessed about that for a couple of days, and then when I had to name the special, I was like, "Hey, you know what? Let me try to turn it and make it a positive, and kind of lean into it a little bit more, and be like, you know what? Screw it. Yeah, it's fun to watch. Whatever it is. There you go. There it is." So that's why I called it Fun to Watch, because I'm like. Because I think we all obsess and we all are so insecure at times or whatever it is that I'm like, let me turn something negative into kind of a positive. And so that's the backstory of it. So I called it Fun to Watch because I like the title, but also I wanted to change it in my brain, like I want to make it a good thing for myself.
That's awesome that you did that because yeah, sometimes you get those kind of passive aggressive or those kind of like backhanded compliments or something like that. Like, oh yeah, it was fun to watch. It's like fuck you, man. But
Yeah, exactly.
but it was like when you see two comics that performed and they go, "You were great," and then they go, "Oh, you were good too."
Yeah,
It's just that
yeah.
same type of vibe. But I love that you twisted it and owned it. And then now I hope that guy realizes that
He'll
maybe
probably never find out that I did that, but at least I can be in my own mind. I can be rest assured that I'm like, all right, I'm trying to work on things instead of just being like, fuck that guy and really and stewing it, which I was already over it. I wasn't like, I wasn't losing sleep over it, but
right.
it was one of those things where it was an example of how that can happen many different times over a career where something is, even if it's misconstrued. I could have misconstrued it. I don't think I did. But even if it is something that misconstrued, hey, turning it into, hey, let me turn this into a fun thing. But yeah, we've all been there with it's not just other comics, it's also an audience. I don't think it's a little bit more innocent with audience when I've been on both sides of this, the exact situation that you said, where an audience member walks by and the other guy you're with, he goes, "Oh my God, dude, you were hilarious." And then they look at you and go, "Have a great night, man."
Yeah. But I
And it's
love
like, oh God. And I've been on both. We've all had great sets, and we've all, it's that's why it's such a mind fuck, this thing.
yeah, exactly. It's like they always say, like, everybody could be laughing, but it's that one person that's not that you're focused on.
Zero
Uh
right in. Yeah. It
yeah,
took me because you're Long Island. I'm from Long Island. I started in the city, but you're Long Island, right?
yeah, I'm Long Island. I was raised in Brentwood, the beautiful,
Yeah.
luxurious town of Brentwood.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then now I live out east in Manorville. But I lived in Raleigh for a little bit. I lived in Raleigh for like 12 years. I worked for
Raleigh's great.
it's a great comedy town too. People don't realize, like, Good Nights
Yeah.
Comedy Club out there, and then they got the Comedy Works. Where'd you shoot this one? Your
I
special?
shot it at Good Nights. I'm not Good Nights. I'm sorry. I shot it at a rock club. I forget the name of the rock club because
Was it
I'm
Lincoln? No,
no, it was oh God, I can't even think of the name right now. It's like I totally forget the name, but it was with Rally Comedy. They have like shows there all the time. I'll find it and maybe put on the notes or something. I'm so out of it today. I woke up at like 7 in the morning, but um yeah, there's a rock club there, but I've done Good Nights, and Good Nights is one of my favorite clubs in it's so good.
Good
And
Nights
the
is
audiences
great.
are so good out there, and it's just it's a nice, easy town, and it's great. It's beautiful. So I had a blast. I in this same, I went there for Good Nights, and then I went there for this shoot, like not too far after, like a couple months after it. So it was fun.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a great town. But yeah, growing up on Long Island, you talk about a mecca of stand-up comedy. I mean, like, so many great comedians came out of Long Island. Where in Long Island are you from? You said you were raised out here?
Yeah, so I'm from like I went to like Garden City High School, but I'm the town I'm from is called Stewart Manor, but it's literally 6 blocks, 6 blocks. It's just like it's very tiny, and it's kind of part of Garden City. And it's so funny because Garden City is known as a rich town,
Yeah.
and I did not grow up rich. And back in the day when I was a kid, I wouldn't say Garden City because I was all afraid people were like, oh, he's a stuck up rich kid, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And then now I'm like, yeah, go ahead, think. I wish I had the cash for growing up in Garden City and the summer house and the trust fund. Would be I love it. I'm 46 almost. That'd be fantastic, you know. But when I was like in my 20s, I'm like, right outside of Garden City, like you try to be like a cool factor thing. It's like, who gives a shit? Yeah, I was a rich
Right.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna? Yeah.
Yeah. Was it tough growing up, not being rich, but around rich people all the time?
You know what I think? I've had a lot of time to think about it. I've been in Brooklyn, Queens, and now I live in Manhattan. For about 20 years. So even being outside Long Island, you get a lot of perspective on that stuff. And I think if I had to really now, this is also 8 years of therapy talking, but if I had to talk about it now, mostly it lives in my head. The difference, and don't get me wrong, yeah, there's kids can be jerks, but it's like the normal teenage experience with a tinge of rich assholeness. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there was things that were said in passing. You know, there was your that was fun to watches of my high school career.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was fun to watch. You poor piece of shit, whatever it is. But like, but we weren't poor. We were middle class, whatever it was. So it's
Right,
like
yeah.
it wasn't this great. I probably had it in my head. There was this great disparity when it really wasn't. It was like but so I would say it mostly lives in my head. My girlfriend says that I have an issue with rich people, and I probably do, and that's why it's like it's like get over it a little bit. So yeah, I think but it didn't ensconce or it didn't interrupt my experience. I still had a good experience. It was just a matter of little things. You'd be like, you notice the size of the houses are different. You know, things are said. We go on this trip. We go on that trip. But like I didn't obsess over it. I don't think. But maybe it probably worked its way into my DNA more than I'd like it to. That kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I hear you because it was similar thing. Not that Brentwood was rich, but like like when I lived in Raleigh and I took my kids to their friends' houses and they're these big like mansion type houses, and I'm like going back to like this apartment.
Yeah,
You do have there is a feeling, even though no one ever would straight up like insult you or anything, but there is a feeling that's in the core somewhere. For me,
also,
anyway. Yeah.
the town that I lived in is called Stewart Manor, and it's 6 blocks, but it's the same zip code as Garden City. But it is a difference in town. And the ironic part is that it's, from what I understand, it's the town that the people who built Garden City lived in as they were building Garden City. So you have that like, hey, here we're in the servants' quarters of a town.
Right,
Like, yeah. So you it does live with you a little bit, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, like I would go to friends' houses, and they would be so much bigger than the one I grew up in, but overall it was great. Overall it was no issue at all.
Yeah, it's a great place to grow up. The whole Garden City area down there, and you got Manor, not Manorville. What's the town with the right next door?
Dwight Park, Franklin Square, Floral Park.
Yeah, you got all those great neighborhoods out there. Roslyn's out close by you, right? And Westbury and all that.
Not that far, yeah. But let me ask you this: when did you get back to Long Island?
I worked it for a little bit in sports. Like I said, I was working with the Carolina Hurricanes. So I moved to Raleigh in 2004, and then I came back. Then I went to Atlanta, worked for the Atlanta Falcons for a little bit, and then I came back in
awesome.
2019, just in time for because I worked for the Rangers, New York Rangers, for a little while, and then they didn't extend my contract because of COVID. So it was right in time for the COVID lockdowns.
Oh wow!
And then got a job now, work remote, and then that gave me the opportunity to start getting back into.
Oh, that's fantastic! That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great.
So
that's interesting.
It's fun to be back home. You don't realize. I don't know if you've ever lived outside of I know you lived like all the boroughs, but I don't know.
City, but believe me, dude. Yeah, I got a story about that too. But what are you gonna say? Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say when you're the fish out of water, so to speak. And you have the accent, even though my accent's not that heavy anymore.
Same
But
here. Mine's not that bad, but it's enough for places
it's
like, yeah.
they know it, and then that becomes your identity. And then people don't also understand, like, if you get, like, if I answer this, if I say something like, no, it's not, let's just say, man, that's a blue car. It's not blue, that's light blue, whatever. They think I'm mad or something. So it's weird. They don't know how to read our temperament,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when I got back, I was so happy because there's a million of me here. So
Yes.
it's like, you know what I mean?
I'll
But
tell you, man, I have so much to talk about on this because here's the thing. Did you ever see Comedian, the documentary with Seinfeld from back in the day?
yeah, it's a
I've
great
watched
doc.
it 1,000 times. It's one of the reasons, I before I did comedy, after I did comedy.
Yeah.
And there's one line when he goes to governors, but it wasn't the owners now, but he goes to the old guys who used to own it at the
Right.
time. This is 99 or whatever it was. And he goes and he does it, and it's like the most awful. Like they're just being how Long Island can be. Not everybody. And he gets out of there, and he said one of my favorite quotes ever. He goes, "It's everything you hate but know is a part of you at the same time. Like it's like that kind of thing."
Levittown. That's really Alabama. Long Island, baby. It's everything you hate about yourself. It's staring right back at you. Everything you tried not to be, but you know deep down still are.
When I go back, so when I'll do brokerage or I'll do it, I relate because I love it. But I also know there's a reason I started comedy in this city because when I started the scenes, it might as well been the middle of Ohio. Like the scenes were that different. Like,
Right, yeah.
And I knew when I got a day job in the city, I was like, let me start here. There's more open mics here. Let me do that. So when I go back, I love it every time. But you do have that part of you that's like, oof, I know what people are talking about when they talk shit about Long Island. You get it. But I'm like, once again, the older I get, the more I go to appreciate it. The more I appreciate it more because I think it's original and it's more unique. It's like I've been all over the country. I've been kind of internationally for comedy a little bit, but nothing crazy. But like I've been all over the country, and there's so many things that they talk about. Like even Long Island, like it's even people in this. When you meet people in New York that are from somewhere else, they all treat Long Island like it's this lab experiment. They're like, I don't know, or like it's Narnia, or they're like, what is that? What happens there? What happens in Long Island? And it's like, it's so funny because you're like, it's just people from Queens that like, it's like Oregon Trail, but for people who used to live in the city. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right,
they
exactly.
just expanded their adventure. You know what I mean? But dude, as far as comedy goes, like I never thought I'd be doing this as a job. I wanted to try it. It went way beyond what I thought would happen. Right.
Right.
But before I even did that, when I first went to California, I was visiting my sister, and to give you an idea of Long Island, and her roommate's boyfriend was there. I was just talking about this with friends. It was one of my favorite moments ever because it was my first instance of, oh, you're from somewhere different and people are like fascinated. So we're all hanging out. He gets up. I sat in his seat and he came back and I was like, oh, I was in your seat. And he goes, no, it's okay. And I go, no, go ahead. I just go ahead. Like, and he was obsessed with like Wu-Tang Clan and New York. Like never been to New York. This kid was like, Bay Area, like California kid. And you would have thought I did a magic trick in front. The kid lost his ever loving mind. He goes, oh, go ahead. What's that? What's go ahead? What is that? What is go ahead? What's go ahead? And I go, it's go ahead. It's go ahead. Take the seat. Take your seat back. Whatever it is. So we don't realize how people react because they're used to it on TV. That's why Seinfeld and Soprano, all that stuff. They're like, it's still part of that New York experience. So it was such an experience. Now, granted, it wasn't the whole time this happened, but I was in Des Moines, Iowa for the first time. I did the Funny Bone there. And talk about if you want a yin and yang of audiences, you have Long Island and Des Moines because I'm there and I noticed this weird phenomenon that how you do. It's not just a New York thing. Like if you're on a roll, if you're gaining momentum, you're talking into the laughs on the next joke to keep. I don't know if people know this, but most audiences do. They can do two things at once. They can listen to you while they're still laughing about a joke because you're trying to get to the next thing. Right now, good. I also talk super fast, and I get that.
Right.
So I noticed this weird thing where like jokes would do well, but they would go these short little bursts of laughter because I was doing the thing where I was talking into the laugh because I'm like, well, I want to keep this going. And I noticed it was like, ha, and then the minute I start talking, they would stop and listen. And then the minute I stopped talking, they start talking, they would stop and listen. So afterwards, I was like, I think they liked it. It was like short bursts. And this dude from there was like, no, man. He goes, you started talking again. They have a politeness factor thing where you're talking, they can't make noise because you're talking. And I was like, and don't get me wrong, there was other shows that didn't have this, but I was like, because it wasn't a thing where it was like because they were like, you get a big pop on a joke and you're like, and it's supposed to play itself out. They were so mindful. They would cut it out right away. And I'd be like, wow, that is so weird to me, man. It's so weird.
It is weird because you want to keep running the joke and you want to keep building on the laughs and keep them going. And then, they're being so polite.
People listen differently from different places and people react differently. And the same way that you can go, you can have an audience that's having the one that they're kind of just there. You can see them smiling, but they're not really crazy laughing. It's not like these when you're murdering and you're like, I know exactly what's happening in this room. And afterwards, they're like, that was so great. And it's like, you didn't make one noise out of your mouth. They're like, oh, I loved it. And you're like, you're out of your mind. You have to show your emotions at some point. Yeah?
Yeah, especially if you're at the club, you want to hear it. Yeah,
let me do my job here. Yeah, show me. Or you go to Midwest and a couple of times. That was my first experience because I think the way I started was there's so much I was such a fan of comedy, and I think when I started open mics in New York, it's such a street fight kind of mentality. And when I started doing road stuff and you start doing longer sets, you were like the audience. It's like you're the enemy, and I'm going to win you. I'm going to win this no matter what. I will win. And I think I forget where I was. It was one of the Midwestern clubs. And it was the first time somebody, I think might have been Comedy on State and in Madison, Wisconsin. And somebody comes up to me, they go, thank you so much. They go, thank you so much for making the trip out here and performing for us. And I was like, I didn't know how to react. I was like, what are you talking about? What do you even mean by that? I'm like, you know what it is? The mentality is, and maybe it's insecurity, but the mentality is like, are you fucking with me? Are you being a wise ass?
That's the New York in you.
That's the New York in you. Why would you say that? Why wouldn't you just say nothing?
Why wouldn't you just, what are you going to say next? I was fun to watch, you motherfucker.
Fun to watch, exactly. I don't know why I still do it. I have so much anger involved in this.
No, but it's interesting you say that because it is kind of like you got to, just like in sports or whatever, you put on your game face before you go in front of that crowd because in a sense, because you got to win them over and that they have certain expectations as soon as you,
right.
Especially in different towns where they don't know who you are or and then I never even thought about the different temperaments of like Iowa and Southern or
Western. Some of it, 1,000%, man. You don't even realize some of them. You're not going to appeal to some of them because of the Long Island thing. Like it even happens on the East Coast where Long Island is very, very unique onto its own thing. And when you're used to it, like I go to Long Island, and people hate it when they have to go do comedy in Long Island from out somewhere else because I just love it.
Some people say that the crowds here are tougher for some reason. I guess because maybe they're salt of the earth or they're lean more right.
It's not
or
really
something.
Salt of the earth. They're just very, very. I don't know what you call, but it's this weird thing where it's like. It's this weird thing where, put it this way, one time I was at brokerage and I'm like murdering, like, you know what I'm saying? I know when I'm doing well and I was killing, and there's nothing more confident than when you're in the middle of killing and something's annoying you and you can just call it out because everybody's on your side. Right. And, if I'm bombing, it's like, I'm in a corner after the show, you know what I mean? But like, and this woman was full on, like we're having a conversation now, I was talking to her friend, not back to me, but side to me. And I go, and I'm doing so well. I'm like, I know I'm entertaining here. Right. And I go, hey, I go, I'm killing here. Like just to make like an affable thing. Like instead of just saying, hey, shut up or I'll have you kicked out. Hey, like, look, this is going pretty well. And I go, I'm killing here. And she turns to me in all seriousness and goes, you're doing great. Keep going. And goes back to her friend, starts talking. And there's really like a thing where that kind of sums up Long Island. Like your successes don't translate to like I'll do what I want no matter what. So there's a little bit of an asshole, like the same way that you go. There's an asshole factor to it, but like it's not like a mean thing. It's just like a thing where it's like they just don't get it sometimes. And don't get me wrong,
Right.
you have every facet of an audience member in Long Island, but the ones that become the famous ones are the ones that are just like so difficult they shouldn't be at comedy clubs. And it's because it's such like they've decided that things are whatever it is for them, like it's working out for me personality wise. Everything's working out for me no matter, even if I'm driving a bus somewhere, I'm sweeping up after cats or whatever, but all I have is like that Long Island kind of like demeanor where it's like, oh, I don't know what it is. It's hard to explain because if you go, because another thing about Long Island is they have no sense of humor about a lot of the time. Sometimes they do, but a lot of time no sense of humor about, like, not in general, about goofing on Long Island. So it's
Right,
like that's usually a bad, yeah. But if you know how to navigate it, it can be a blast. Like it's one of those things where it's like if you make fun of Long Island, you get run into trouble, like in certain places. But if you literally, I've like just completely just chastised an entire audience and just made fun of them down the line for talking whatever it was, and they're loving every second of it. And yeah, that can fold over into like the it's about us thing now, whatever it is. But then you also get amazing audiences that are there for comedy, and you get everything. But the ones that aren't other places are like I think it's the accent mixed with like the attitude is when people go, we're not in Manhattan, because also you are getting real New Yorkers because you're getting people whose families are from New York and people who are from New York, because when you're in New York, you're getting tourists and you're getting transplants. So the idea what a New Yorker is has changed. If you go to Glendale, Queens, or you go to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, you're going to get the same thing as Long Island because it's people who are from New York. And and the Long Island one is like, maybe it's a little bit different because it's like, hey, you feel like you're outside the city. So where is this coming from? Maybe that's it. It's like, maybe it's jurisdiction. You don't have the right to do that because you're not real New Yorker. You know how many times I've been told that? I was in LA once, and some girl, she goes, "Where are you from?" I go, "I was in Los Angeles." And I go, "I'm from New York." She goes, "Where?" I go, "Long Island." She goes, "That's not New York." I go, "Well, we're at 3,000 miles. I didn't think you meant what town." Like, I just meant like in general, I'm from the state of New York, so we can relax. We can totally.
Yeah, people forget like New York is more than just the boroughs, but upstate New York. I knew some people from upstate New York that were like, "We're the real New York." I was like, "You guys have a completely different accent. Like, you guys sound like you're
they become
Canadian."
like they become like rednecks. Long Island has it too now. For some reason, with the whole Trump thing, Long Island now. We're not going to get into politics, obviously, but I see way more pickup trucks in Long Island now than I used to.
Especially out here, like the further east you go, the more you see those. And
so there's almost been a movement to, hey, we're not the city. Like, that's another thing, because there's that thing, like, and people I know and people I've seen at shows, hey, we're not the city. Don't. Oh, you're gonna go to the city? That's. There used to be an old Jim Brewer bit where he would talk about, don't switch to Jamaica. What are you gonna do? Switch to Jamaica? You're gonna switch to Jamaica? You're gonna. Like, that was the fear of every white kid from Long Island.
It's so true.
Is this one go to New York? Yep. Yeah. And then you gotta change it to Jamaica.
It's so true. But you started in the boroughs, right? You started in Manhattan, so you never started on Long Island, because there's so many Long Island comics, especially newer guys, that are afraid to go into the city, or they feel like they got to get their set to a certain level before they can go to the city. So I think there's an advantage for how you did it by starting in the city. What clubs did you start in? Where were you going?
The first club I worked was Stand Up New York on 78th, but this is years. This is a while ago, and that's probably I did a lot. So the way I went was I did a lot of mics. Obviously, at first I did a handful of bringer shows, at the clubs. So the first club I worked was Comics, when Comics is around. I'm sorry, Comics. I had a show there, and then I worked the upstairs room there first, and then I worked Stand Up New York. That was the second one. But I spent a lot of years just doing East Village bar shows, and I ran shows and I ran mics, and then I got into the club world of it, and then a couple of credits got me to be able to go and headline on the road. Nice. But
were you ever intimidated as a young comic of the city, being a Long Island guy?
I was intimidated. I was intimidated by stand-up in general. And then what did it for me, and this is such an age-old tale, I feel like the more I say this, the more people tell me they had the same thing, is that I wanted to try it for probably 6-7 years before I did it. I didn't start till I was 28. And the reason I started is because Joe DeVito. We talk about an amazing,
Long Island
amazing,
guy, yeah.
underrated Long Island comic. Amazing comic.
He's
amazing
great, yeah.
comic.
Because unlike other sports and wrestling, when you get your ass kicked, you actually got your ass kicked by someone. Someone actually beat you up in front of other people, you know?
This is one of the reasons that I do stand up, and because he said I used to help him out with his show, and he goes, "There's an open mic around the corner from here. You should go check it out, and then if you like what you see, or if you think you can do it, you go out back the next week and you try." And I did it, and that's exactly what got me up to go do it. Because if you see amateur comedy, not to be once again, it's a little bit of a weird behind the scenes thing, but it's like you can go, "Oh, I can." But it's almost like bringing yourself down to that level. It's like they're doing it. I could try this out. It makes it a little bit more. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I was intimidated by, but not the city, because from where I grew up, it wasn't that far off from me. So like I was working on the city a couple times. I lived in Queens and I lived in Manhattan for a very short period of time, but I always gravitated towards the city more than out east. So, or, I didn't hang out the minute we could. I went to college, Manhattan College. So it wasn't a big deal to be there. And then comedy wise, yeah, there were some big shows I did early on. And then when I started doing clubs, I would be really nervous. And then when I got past the cellar, I was like, oh my God, that's that
huge,
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as being in the city, it wasn't. So like, I think just physically being in the city, a lot of people from Long Island could be like, I'm not even going to venture in. I like to go as least as possible. So it's like easier to do comedy here because I'm not, it's just geographically, I'm more in my comfort space. I was already comfortable going there, and I was also helping out with a couple of shows before I tried it. So I guess that probably helped. That probably eased it. But yeah, I say going up, I was petrified.
I'll tell you, don't move to New York. You know why? Because you still have hope in your eyes. That's why you shouldn't move to New York. New York City makes you a shittier person. And I'll give you an example. I was downtown the other day, and I literally saw a homeless dude giving the finger to an ambulance that was passing by. He just committed the entire way. Went bah, like that, right? I've lived in that city so long, my reaction was, yeah, fuck that ambulance.
And so the first time I went up at that Maui taco place, which is an absolute shit show, it was like, okay, now, and then I went from there and I didn't stop.
Awesome, man. Yeah. And like you said, too, being in the proximity to the city, being already exposed to the city and being there, like you said, you were going there, college and stuff. So the city itself wasn't intimidating. And then, I guess there's so many clubs and so many places to work it out. I don't think there's any place quite like Manhattan for a comedian because there's so many opportunities. You can go on every night, probably 3 or 4 times every night.
Yeah.
If you play it
if
right.
you really, technically, yeah. And you could do it even if the amateur side of things, you could do it. Say you have one spot booked, then you do 3 open mics or whatever you want to do, so, but here's the thing, it's actually a good topic to talk about. I don't know what your feeling is or how long you've been doing it, but man, it's on its head. The business has changed so much. When I came up, it was like, and stand-up is always going to be its own thing. It's an outlier. And, stand-up is like, stand-up is the street fight part of show business. It's almost like this redheaded stepchild part of show business because, man, people, they really, really appreciate the art of stand-up, but then they piss all over it every chance they get by what flies. And that's why show business is different than actual stand-up. And then what's happened in the past 7 years, I think, and I'm part of it, is the social media aspect of it, I think, has convoluted. I think stand-up has, if you're thinking of like, hey, we're giving over a percentage here, we've given over a percentage of our soul, the stand-up souls to the show business because we're like, when COVID happened, we're like, hey, we still want to work and we still want things we still want careers. So we'll give you, we'll kind of like compromise a little bit that stand-up's a little less of the cool thing here because it's kind of true. Like it used to be like before COVID, and like, I'm not complaining. You always want to adapt, like I'm not, right. The old curmudgeon, but a lot of people know the truth that it's like, before COVID, stand-ups in general still had that thing like, yeah, but at least I'm not doing dances. At least I'm not doing, maybe I have TikTok, but I didn't know people had TikTok. Right, but like, even on Instagram, I'm putting stand-up clips up and you can't come do what I do. And then what happened was the minute the stand-ups were like, okay, I'll go to your side, is the minute things got flipped and middle-class comedians got pushed out of the spots they would have done in clubs. Not pushed out, but the sea change happened. And now you have people who are technically stand-ups but have huge TikTok followings, and then they go do these clubs and they headline for the weekend, and it might not be somebody who's doing, and I'm just saying off experience alone, it might not be somebody who's doing 15 spots a week. You might have somebody who's like, I work on my videos and I kind of get as a consolation prize these weekends where I'm making $5 grand, 10 grand, whatever it is, because I'm filling the seats and it's a bar business with a show. So I get that mentality of it, but I think there's still an aspect of it where actually good stand-up will always be a thing, but the amount of times it gets saturated or that gets watered down is just, that's show business. And don't get me wrong, there's a ton of stand-ups that are amazing stand-ups that are famous. What I'm saying is, man, the big hit that happened with COVID with stand-up is the idea of we're making your art a little bit sillier, and we're making you dance a little bit more, hypothetically, not hypothetically, as an analogy, but also not, like literally dance and figuratively dance a little bit more than you would have had to, because the way it was when I started. But also the flip side of it is, that's why you never want to be the guy who's like, I'm not doing that social media shit. It's like, okay, then you're screwed. What can I tell you?
Then you're not going to get. It's such a double-edged sword, like you said. And at Governors, we see sometimes, like you said, the weekend will sell out with some social media, a guy who's like, and then the stand-up is always lackluster. I would say 95% of the time the stand-up is lackluster. And I also think, to your point about social media, we're in a time now where back in the day, whether it was good or bad or otherwise, the comics, one of the comedians' goals was to get a sitcom out of it or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Now it's, hey, I want to get my podcast numbers up, or I want to get my algorithm going. Yeah. It seems like they've, jumped ship of sitcoms, and because now we're seeing so many comedians that have become major players based off podcasts.
Yes. So even if you look at like a Kill Tony, which has become the biggest thing in comedy. I think it's surpassed the Joe Rogan podcast as like the biggest thing you can get on
for comedians
that can make your career. And this is like a fast track thing. I have a lot of opinions about that. I'm not a huge, it's not just because I've never been on it. I never would be asked. I'm not at that level. I don't know the guy. I know of him, but things like that are, they are doing the same thing I just described. It doesn't matter if you're putting a blanket over it that it's, hey, but we're the DIY guys. We're the ones who are canceled, and we did. It's like you're making a guy who's been doing comedy 3 years go up and do one joke, and then it doesn't work out, and you're just fucking destroying the guy. And at least with the old gatekeeper method, he would have had a chance for a win, that, whatever it is. And so there's a lot, that's a whole conversation, but don't pretend that you're doing anybody any favors. You're just looking for content, just like the rest of it. You really don't care if somebody who's really, really trying and really means well is like doing well on your show. It's more of a matter of like, it's a shouting for it thing where you're kind of hoping it doesn't work out, because then you get a whack pack guy, or it's like shock jock bullshit. Like, so it's like any of that stuff. It's corny as fuck to me, like a lot of these things. And I think it's like I think it's like a thing where, because I'm friendly. There's guys who do, the podcasting is taking over, where I'm friendly with a lot of guys who do podcasts, and I do podcasts myself. But I'm like, I think you have to make a choice at some point to go like, all right, this is just how, like, especially the whole like the old adage where you don't go after somebody's act. It's like, how having a show like that are you not going after somebody's act? You're doing it every episode. So it's like, how is that cool?
Oh shit! Oh my god! Oh, gross. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's have some fun. Ari, welcome to another episode of Watch Ari Shafir piss in a man's chest, everybody.
I don't know, man. I think that instead it was just like, hey, let the act first speak for itself. But if you're literally having somebody stand up and go, do one joke, and that doesn't work out, and this kid's literally shaking.
Right, yeah.
Literally, the mic's shaking, and then you're making fun of the mic shaking, and you're saying he sucks. And it's the number one. It's like the Coliseum. It's like the Gladiator. It's insane. It's like it's one of these things. It's like you're not a stand-up if you're doing that. You're just a shock jock radio host who's trying to get content for his radio show. And you're fucking. It's corny. It's really corny.
You don't look 19.
I don't look 19.
No.
Yeah, tell that to bartenders, man.
Yeah.
You look like both the pedophile and the victim. Very rare type of human to be able to look like both.
It is very much, I've never thought of it that way. Like taking a show like Kill Tony is very much like a shock jock style thing, where they're just kind of trying to embarrass people, maybe humiliate people, or
I
some
think
people come out.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, some people do come out, doing well. That dude David, I can't think of his name. He does a lot of roasts on there with Tony a lot.
Yeah, the big guy.
Yeah, the big guy. Yeah, and
David something.
Yeah, I can't.
Here's the thing. I'll do a caveat that I mean here. It's the biggest thing in comedy. Like, I get it. I get why people do it. I get why this guy does it. The guy who runs it, because it's making him so much money. I do think it's made some people's careers, but I also think that one guy, David Lucas,
yeah.
You look like you should be on the front of a gay cigarette box.
Do they have gay cigarettes? I want a carton if they do.
You gotta smoke that motherfucker the backwards.
But I see, and I think it's a thing where it's like, if it works out for you, of course you'd be doing it. I would just never run a show where I'm shitting on people's acts. That guy's like a regular. It'll help that guy, and he's competent, whatever it is. They have these lambs going to get slaughtered. Not all the time. I get the idea where it can help you out, but even the ones that helps out, it's like, who's the guy, Hans Kim or something like that, and the other guy. All these guys will just seem like it seems like Stern in the '90s with a whack pack.
60 seconds uninterrupted. This is Hans Kim.
What's up? Holy shit.
It doesn't seem like guys that you're like, hey, here's just kind of a down the middle guy who's trying things out that we're going to, because think about it this way. If it's not somebody who's like shocking the audience a little bit, it's all comics in the audience. It's not somebody who's shocking them a little bit or kind of like whack tacky or a little bit weird, a little bit odd. That's going to like, hey, you can come back and be like a character on the show. Right. But if you're just a solid comic that goes up and one joke doesn't go well and then you get pounced on. Yeah. Come on, man. Is that cool to do? Nah, it's not. It sucks.
No,
but the flip side of it, like the guy makes a lot of money doing that, man. They're doing Madison Square Garden. It's the biggest thing ever. I get it. I get why you do it. I guess why you'd be tempted to do it. But
yeah, like if you're an open micer and you know the risk, you still might, because like you said, the social media gives you that instant fame. So they might do it, even though they know they're going for a slaughter. They still might do it.
100%. That's another thing.
Weird to me, but yeah.
The other thing is, I get I'm not saying that it's their fault that these guys go on and fail on the show. These guys are grown. They're adults. They can make up their own mind. They can deal with everybody's grown up. You can deal with a loss. I'm just saying that the inherent premise of the show doesn't seem like something that was made up by an actual stand-up. It just seems like somebody's trying to be shitty to people. Even if it works out for some of the people, it's still a shitty premise. But it's worked out. It's worked out like gangbusters.
I'll be honest with you, dude. That shit sucks. What are you gonna do?
What am I supposed to do? I mean,
tackle
him. I feel like I'm getting yelled at by a high school football coach.
You are.
I remember early on watching Kill Tony, like when they were still in California and was just starting to bubble. And I remember not thinking that I would never have imagined it would have become what it is now. Like I would have thought that there would be like compared to, the Tonight Show for comedians nowadays. I never I heard somebody say that the other day.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
It is.
It kind of is, if you think about it.
It is, but it's also like, all right. So it is, but it's also like American Idol when they had like William Hung up, and they let him get past the second round because they were hoping that they would shit all over.
She bangs, I'm wasted by the way she.
Thank you.
You can't sing, you can't dance, so what do you want me to say?
And I have no professional training of singing.
No.
So it's like you're just American Idol for fucking like dudes in hoodies from Austin or whatever, whoever's showing up. And then on top of that, it's like it becomes like I wouldn't think it either, but it's like I think like he's good buddies with Joe Rogan. Like you have big names on that show, so that gets you that. But I wouldn't have thought it would have been a big deal anyway. But people do dig watching that kind of stuff. Like they dig. I'm guilty of it. I've watched not that, but I mean like I've seen a handful of clips from that show. But I've watched I've watched some of those American Idol auditions and shit. Like I get it. People like it almost like makes you feel better about yourself and your shortcomings or something. Whatever. So, but don't get me wrong, man. Like it's a success. those people the people can do it. They know what they're getting into. I think I would say 9.5 out of 10 of them know that I might get destroyed on this. I might, this guy's Mike Pouncey. So saying that, like, go ahead, go for it. But I think if you're thinking like philosophically, I think you're shitty for doing it. I do think it's instead of just being a funny stand-up, because it's like, it's the podcast show business equivalent of like a guy after somebody meeting you at a bar or something or through friends and going, "You're a comedian? Tell me a joke.
Yeah.
Tell me a joke." Who loves that?
Over the course of a lifetime, the average human being takes 800 million decisions. 800 million decisions. So of course we're gonna take a few bad ones, and that's how I get laid. Thank you very much.
It's true, and it is kind of too like American Idol in a way, where back in the day, American Idol used to get criticized for fast tracking kids, or people through to stardom. And here you got these guys that have been doing open mics for a year that could potentially all of a sudden they'll see their Instagram followers go up a ton just because. And
it's because they worked out for that audience. It's you're not really. At least, in the back in the day, you had Tonight Show and stuff like that. Yeah, you could have a rough set on it, whatever it is. But at least it was like worked on, and they gave you an opportunity, or whatever it is. So don't get me wrong, but it's also a thing where it's like I said, like those guys know what they're doing. Like if you're not self-aware enough not to go on this thing, if you don't work for, you have to like. I think people think it's like this even keeled. Not to go on. I don't want to go on for 40 minutes about this, but I mean. I think people think it's like an even keeled audience. It's like, hey, we're just a straight up comedy audience. No, it's not. It's like filled with people who didn't get on the show and people who want to hear a certain type of deal. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if you bomb, you bomb. I get it. If it's a bad joke, bad joke. I get it. I'm just saying that don't go on it pretending that it's like this completely balanced judging scenario. It's just not. And it's whatever, go for it. But it's like, don't pretend you're not being shitty.
Noah, how long you been doing stand-up?
This is my first time.
Whoa!
Yeah. Let's go. Thank you.
Popped his cherry, which is fitting because he looks like he eats a sundae every day of the week.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, comedy keeps ebbing and flowing, and there's different mediums for outlets and all this kind of stuff. And now we're seeing too with the social media stuff, a lot of comics from all levels are, kind of flooding it with crowd interaction, that sort of thing. What's your take on that? I understand why comics would do that. I don't know if you do much of that, but
I posted a bunch of crowd work clips. So that's. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I understand why, because you don't want to burn material and all that kind of stuff. But do you think? Everybody has different takes on this like a hot button issue these days about this. Some guys are all for it. Some guys don't like it. Some guys feel like they have to, just to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. So I just wanted to get your take on kind of crowd work videos.
So I've talked about this. I'm talked about on podcasts before, and I talked about it with friends ad nauseum. So we're blue in the face, whatever. And my take on it is this. It might be a generational thing. I've put up tons of crowd work clips. I do crowd work when I do headlining sets. I have nothing against crowd work. But the difference is I know why I do it.
Right.
So one thing that's not being said about this is that, in my opinion, this is just take it with a grain of salt. But in my opinion, now it's such an accepted thing. There's two things that can happen. Is that if you're going to do this is what's happened with stand-up and show business. Now it's changed so much that if you're going to put these clips up and somebody comes see you, you can't get mad when people shout shit out or they're talking during your set. Like if you've based your whole online presence on that, you just can't. Like a lot of people, because of these crowd work clips, say you're 25, you've never been to a stand-up show, and all you see is crowd work clips online, you think that's a portion of the show. So I've seen people put crowd work clips up and then get mad at the crowd. It's like, you can't do it. So that's one thing. The other thing is this. I know what crowd work was functional, and there's no such thing as a crowd work comic. Like people are like, what about Big J Okerson, the crowd work comic? He goes, he's not a crowd work comic. He's a guy who talks to the crowd and then weaves bits in and out of the crowd.
You're from Canada? Yeah. Welcome. Is this your husband? Yes. So you had to move here to America to interracial marriage? Yeah, we're pretty progressive over here. I don't know if you Canucks have figured that out just yet.
And the guy does amazing crowd work, but it's like a Patrice scenario. Like Patrice is like that, where it was like this is all calculated, and it's just they're so good, just off the cuff, that it's like they're weaving it into a bit that works here and there and next way. That's not just straight up crowd work.
Right.
There's a difference.
I feel like you're here just to fuck me up. I feel like that's what it is. In your fucking really jazzy fucking... You wear jazzy outfits. You wear outfits like a modern day Miami Vice character. That's why you wear outfits like... You really fucked me up. I made fun of your suit. It got nothing last night. That did okay. Okay, God! But I like... It's all right. I feel like we're family already. Good for you. I don't like to see that. Somebody I saw 12 hours ago right there just looking and judging all my shit.
But I know why. Straight up crowd work, I know why I would do it is because I was either trying to bring them back from something, and you said something they didn't dig, so you go into the crowd a little bit on a 45-minute set and trying to get back. Or I know that it's like my thing is like I don't write enough new, and I'm trying to pull something out of it or whatever I'm trying to do, but I never considered it this thing. Somebody told me on Twitter maybe like a year or two ago. I was like, hey, I've heard people are doing. I've heard people were doing crowd work at open mics. I was like, you should stop doing this if you're doing crowd work at open mics. And people not lost it, but a couple people wrote to me and said, what if they're a crowd work comic and they're plying their trade? And I go, there's no such thing. Crowd work is just part of this. And a lot of people know why. It's because writing jokes is really hard. It's really hard. And writing evergreen jokes that work on a consistent basis for a long time that you're having fun saying is one of the hardest things to do in showbiz, in the writing world. And nobody wants to admit that. So pretending I've done it. And also I'm guilty of it. I'm not precluding myself. I'm not a genius writer. I'm okay joke writer that's really good at crowd work. But I know the difference. I know that writing something, even you write something on stage that works. I've done that before. You write a joke, hey, this worked really well. It does really well for a while.
Yeah.
But to turn around and compare yourself to somebody who is a truly proficient writer and performer, but all you do is crowd work, and it's straight up crowd work. It's not like there's a guy named Ian Bagg who is, if you're going to call anybody a crowd work comic, I guess it's him, but he's brilliant with it. And he's very unique, and he's very organic, and he's just in control the entire time.
Are you married? What's the deal? No, what kind of man are you looking for? Let's put it out there. We got a lot of... Not him? Did you even point at anybody? Did you fucking just yell? Oh, you pointed. I just seen you go, not him, like you shut every man down here. Like fucking golden vagina. Fucking not him. Fucking you're not good enough for this. I'm not meeting a man in a fucking basement, I'll tell you that much.
But if you're just doing, you're straight up crowd work and you're putting that up, all I'm asking is to be self-aware of what you're doing. You're just taking the lazy way out and I say this because that's what I've done many a time. I posted a clip up because, hey, I got a big pop and it's a good little crowd work thing, but I don't hold it in the same regard as something that I've worked on or some other thing that I'm in awe of so that's where I think we're at with this thing. I think the perception of it is where I've been doing it almost 19 years in June. And then the perception of it is where I differ, but like, once again, you never want to be the guy who's in the rocking chair telling about in my day we didn't consider crowd work this. So maybe it's just changed, and maybe it's out of my hands here.
What do you do, Alex?
I work at the DMV.
You work at the DMV? Go f yourself, Alex. Right in your Benjamin Button face. You're not even aging and you work at the DMV? Why would you put yourself in this vulnerable situation? Guess what? You're in my world now. I'm gonna do 45 minutes of you just so you have to wait. How about that? How does it feel, Alex? Why would you say that? You say you work in an office, you weirdo. I work at the DMV. Guess what? We're gonna be here for 4 hours, Alex. And I'm just gonna hand you a number, a thing with a number on it. And then I'm gonna tell you didn't bring the right forms for my comedy.
And the burning material thing, I don't know if that even holds water. I've heard that as well. It makes no sense because I was thinking about this the other day, real quick. Sorry to go off for a while, but I was thinking about this the other day. Back in the day, a lot of these guys, even like your Kevin Jameses and your Brian Regans, all these guys, when there was no internet and they were coming up in the clubs 80s, 90s, they were working on the same hour for like 15 years straight. They would just go back to these towns and yeah, maybe it would change it up a little bit. But I feel like the bulk of it would have been like, hey, I'm burning these jokes at these. The live gigs was like, well, I did that hour there again. So technically, you'd be like, I had to come back in a year and do a brand new hour, which is only a fairly like 10-year-old phenomenon from like the Louis specials, where it's like you have to start turning over these jokes. So the idea of burning material, I think, is kind of false because they're going to come see you anyway. If they dig you, they're coming to see you anyway. And by the time they see you, they'll forgot you post that joke from 6 months ago, or you might even be different at that point if you're constantly working. So I think it's perception, and I think things are changing. Like there's a guy, Jeff Arcuri, that does really well crowd work and has a huge following. It's like 1 million, and he's very good at it. And he's very clever. But I think he knows it's crowd work. I hope he knows it. It's still crowd work. And I think, but I'm like, if they come and they yell at you because of it, you can't. Don't get me wrong. Nobody wants anybody shouting out of the show, but you can't. You have to understand it more than you would have like 10 years ago. There used to be a shame factor at comedy shows.
It's cute. I noticed it when I came in, not like that, but I noticed it when I came in. And they're sitting, I'm like, those guys look young because they're also sitting on the stools and also both their legs are like, you were doing that. Don't even deny it.
Yeah, for sure. But like to your point too about like burning material and and the comics, especially before the internet, using the same stuff, and all that. I kind of agree with you on that. I think I don't necessarily believe in burning the material. I think a lot of times, like, let's say I watched some of your set or I saw one of your specials, and then I go and I see you and you're doing that material, I'll be like, yeah, I love this,
Yeah.
For me, and then also you still, there's other things that you may have missed. There's also there's a whole different vibe when you're live in the moment at any show. Like if I came and saw you 2 nights in a row and you did the same set, it's still going to be a different vibe, because everything's just different in the moments. So yeah,
and a longer set on the road, you would have maybe a couple of interactions or a crowd thing here and there or something would happen during the show, whatever it is, depending on the comic. Yeah, if somebody just wrote saying something for 45 minutes, you'd be like, well, I saw the hour, I'm not going back because I saw it again. But if it's performed differently, yeah.
Yeah, now that feels like there's pressure for comics, especially guys like you that are putting out specials that are have a presence on social media. There's like do you feel a pressure that you have to have new material all the time?
I feel more the pressure that from my so what I've gotten to, because it's changed so much, I'm trying to just have new material that's better than what I've done before, because like I said before, the strength of my writing, I don't think I've leveled up like I should, considering how long I've been doing it. So now it's more of a personal competition to get to a point where I have another hour where I'm like, oh, this is an obvious upgrade from what I've been doing for X amount of years. The pressure point comes from social media stuff, because that's what it's all based off now. So the idea of like, I have new jokes, get me social media stuff, it's an unhealthy way to think, I think, because it's like, it should just be doing it for yourself and for your growth as a comedian. Technically, not to be dramatic, but it's true. But I think more so what the pressure point is like, oh shit, I have to get to X. Hey, maybe this podcast will work because of this, or this clip will working. Because I had one clip go technically viral recently that once I saw what happens when it hits, I got like a couple million, whatever it is, which for me is like unheard of. Right. Awesome. And I've had some ones do like, good, but not like that. Right. But I see why there's like this thing that people like, they zero in on the social media, because the amount of interaction I got from it and the amount of followers I got from it, I'm like, oh man, now how do I make another one go like that? So I can kind of get fans out of this.
Right.
So I get the mindset.
Yeah.
So that's more the pressure point than it really is to come up with the new jokes. Cause I'm like, man, I think like if you find that thing, you're like, oh, the new jokes can come later, or the perspective can come later, because, hey, I'm doing enough gigs where it's filling in,
Yeah, for sure. It's so crazy, because you could never have predicted this. Like, you've been in the business, like you said, for about 19, 20 years.
19, yeah.
You couldn't ever have predicted this then. Like, there's going to be a podcast and there's going to be social media that you have to contend with. You have to be part of this and you have to be part of that. Yeah. It's not just about the act anymore. There's all this other different shit you have to also do and be good at and be funny and draw a crowd.
Yeah.
You know, it takes you kind of. I think it's good for the most part because it does it opens everybody up to wider audiences like we've never seen.
So I think you're right. So back in the day, I was talking about this with somebody recently. Like when you can't use the term 80s hack anymore. Because now we know the numbers, right? So that makes sense. So like for years, even since I started doing like, oh, this guy's like an 80s hack. And I'm like, well, I don't buy that anymore. I'll tell you why. Because if you, man, oh man, like way before I even started, and I'm sure before you started, you did Carson. It was like Carson's probably a better example of what Kill Tony is. And a way more positive, way more cultivated example. Like, so you know how it was. Everybody knows these famous stories, which were fucking true, which was like 30 million people watching on a good episode of Carson, and you kill, and he calls you over to the couch and the whole thing. It's a career maker thing. That's 30 million people. Now, I don't know how many people listen to an episode of Kill Tony, but I don't think it cannot be that. We're especially at that time of the world. Right. That had to be, if we're at 300 million now, it was more than 10% of the country watching Carson on a daily basis, right? So on a nightly basis, you know. Anyway, so now that we know the numbers, and you know what those guys were doing, and the amount of different types of people they were performing towards, they weren't 80s hacks. They were guys who were like, we're making this as general as possible because we're trying to have a career here. The same way that you can flip it now, and you're like, now everybody, don't get me wrong, it's niche. A lot of people who should be recognized are being recognized because they're funny people, and it doesn't have that gatekeeper mentality anymore as much. And they kind of flipped it but like things like Kill Tony now have become like the industry, but the numbers that they're fighting for are so much less than what it was back in the day. And it's still that same mentality where it's like, just like Kill Tony, or just like, not to harp on that, but I mean, like, just like anything you're doing where it's like, well, you better go along this line of, you know, you better be so niche that you stand out, so that there's a Netflix thing or whatever it is, that it's almost the same thing as saying like, you're so general. Okay. So I'm so neat. It's like, it's just opposite ends of the same spectrum. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no, you know, the down the middle stuff, I guess, is, you know, where it's like, you can just be the strength, the strong act. I'm just a good comic thing. Yeah. You're going to eke out whatever piece of the pie you're going to eke out, which is happening now, which is good there's tons of comics that probably weren't getting the fair shake they were getting from show business. And it's good that they can, but they probably deserve more. I'm sure they'd rather have the opportunity where it's like, I wish I had my HBO special where I'm funny, because it's like the funniest comics coming up are never the ones that make it the biggest. We're 9 times out of 10, you know.
Right.
And every comic has said that. The funniest guy I knew stopped when he was in year 7. Funniest guy I knew, you know. It's so. Yeah. Stand-up's always going to be this weird like orphanage of things where it's like, man, we're going to talk about the art of stand-up till 3 a.m, but at the end of the day, everybody, you still want that, not even the fame factor, just the successful, even within what you do, because it's still a job, you know.
Yeah, and like you said, man, about some of the guys that fall off because of their persistence, and sometimes you're not getting where you want to get as fast as you think or whatever. And if your life catches up with you one way or the other, and you always hear about there's so many great comics that fall to the wayside and just go on with normal lives or something like that. And it is kind of, I always think of it as kind of sad, because you always think about what if they only held on, you know, like never quit, you know, never give up, all those kind of cliche things. And that's kind of is my mantra with this whole thing. I'm like, I just got to keep going, man. So something's going to pop. So sooner or later, something's going to happen. And I think everyone has that.
I think that the way that's been helping me, because I've had successes, but never famous, but like, you know, I've had things happen in X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is, and I've been able to work for X amount of years in it, like about 12 years. But like, and then before that, I had a day job. But like, I think now I'm coming into the thing of like, ooh, if I could get better and be happy with myself as a comic, that would be more the win than anything else than something. Because I gotta be honest, there's nothing even when you look at like the hour specials thing, and I just put the special, it's a half hour. I'm like, ooh, I want to get to a point where this year and change, I come out with a brand new hour that I can maybe try to sell it. There's an off chance, or put it on YouTube and be like, holy shit, I worked really hard at this, and here's the culmination of me trying to have that healthy mindset of like, hey, let me just worry about looking on my own paper, not give a shit about anything else. You know, like let me just worry about myself, which I think is probably that's the healthiest. I think a lot of people don't, and include myself. I'm so bad at it, but the more I hear about people kind of doing that, is they become better and better and better and better.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely because you're challenging yourself. You're trying to outdo yourself. You're not trying to outdo the next guy or somebody else. You're, and I think that's the best way to do it. Anything in life is just challenge yourself always and try to raise the bar on yourself. And dude, I think you're hilarious, bro. I watched a lot of your stuff. Yeah, I've been watching your stuff for past few years. Then getting ready for this, I watch your specials and everything, and I saw you on Instagram a bunch. Hilarious stuff, man. And dude, man, you're the man, bro.
I saw one of the most Brooklyn hipstery things I've ever seen in my life. I saw some girl FaceTiming her friend's cat for the first time. And the worst part about it was the girl's boyfriend was on the other side of the FaceTime narrating what the cat would say during the FaceTime. So the girl was like, hello, Mr. Scruggins. It's nice to meet you. And the boyfriend's behind the phone like, I like snacks. And my first thought was, I'm a Republican.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you having me, dude. This is a blast, man.
Yeah, this was awesome having you on. We got to have you back because we didn't even get to talk about UFOs yet.
Oh, well, we'll do a marathon one on that one. I'll tell you right now.
Dude, let's do this again, man.
Let's do it again. I would love to, man. Just let me know.
Yeah, you're awesome, man. If you ever come back to Long Island, hit up Governors, man. Let me know. I'll be there, and I'm planning on getting into the city, so I'll be checking out your tour dates. And for anybody who wants to come check you out or follow you and all that, where could they do that?
You can follow me at Shawnee Time on Instagram, and I'm SeanDonnellyComedy.com on a website. But go to Instagram because I always post shows on there. And I have a link tree thing that gives you a rundown of all the tickets and all that kind of stuff. So that, and then check out Brand New Jerks, the podcast.
Excellent. You're the man, Sean. Appreciate you so
Thanks,
much.
Tom.
Thank you. Everybody check him out. Sean Donnelly, everybody.
Thank you so much.